Welcome to the Ohio Arts Council's Rife Gallery. This is a programming series for our current exhibition, The Nexus of Art and Health, curated by Sienna Brown. Today, we are thrilled to present artist Suki Kwon. As a brief reminder, everyone tuning in today is in listen-only mode, so please feel free to utilize that chat function to ask your questions, and we'll be sure to get to them during the Q&A portion of the hour. Next, live captioning is available, and you can access that by clicking on the closed captioning icon and selecting Show Subtitle. Also, please keep in mind that because we're presenting from separate locations, there may be some variation of bandwidth, so if one of us freezes up or the sound fluctuates, thanks in advance for bearing with us. And lastly, to get everyone comfy, please go ahead and click on that chat feature, say hello, and let us know where you are tuning in from. All right, thanks everyone. Now to you, Suki.
Thank you. First of all, thank you, Kat and Anya, for preparing this talk. And I greatly appreciate the opportunity to share my artistic journey with you this afternoon. Preparing this artist talk as part of the Nexus of Art and Health exhibition has provided me an opportunity to pause and reflect on my current and past creative research as a designer in relation to who I am, what I stand for. I am a Korean, a naturalized American who lives and works in the city of Dayton, Ohio. I joined the Faculty of Art and Design at the University of Dayton in 2004. In 2022, I received my MA in Theological Studies from the University of Dayton. Previously, I received my MFA and MA in Design from the University of Iowa. Trilingual in Korean, English, and Japanese, I have traveled extensively throughout many parts of the world, starting with London. I conducted independent research in Tokyo, Japan, on a foreign language area studies fellowship, a Stanley scholarship, and I have taught, researched, and traveled in China as a visiting scholar, as faculty leader of a study abroad program, and as an international seminar participant. I have received a Hanley Sustainability Institute Scholarship, a Liberal Arts Catalyst Grant, a Sustainability Energy Environment Initiative Research Grant, 3 University of Dayton Summer Research Fellowships, 2 International Research and Development Grants from Nanjing University of Science and Technology, and an Iowa Fine Arts Council grant. I have won a Niche Magazine Best Furniture Design Award and was selected to be a Maryland Institute College of Art Summer Artist in Residency and a Norton Island Residency. I received a 2009 Ohio Art Council Traditional Arts Apprenticeship Grant and was a 2019 recipient of the Ohio Art Council Individual Excellence Award. Recently, my work was featured in Matter and Spirit, a Chinese-American exhibition which toured many parts of the US. My works have also been exhibited in the US, Korea, Japan, China, and other parts of the world. Okay, this is a factual statement about me. It describes what I do, but it hardly explains the reasons and the path I took to become who I am today and why I do what I do. Why did I have Korea? Why did I leave Korea and became an American? Why did a psychology graduate decide to become an artist designer? What drives me to pursue graduate study in theology at this mature stage in my life and career? What meanings does this course of study have for me, and how does it influence my research and career? People say life is about connecting the dots, the moments of decision in one's life. The London trip was my first active decision and was among the best decisions of my life. I spent a year in London as a sophomore in college because I knew someone who had stayed in London and had told me what it was like. This was when I reclaimed my lost youth wasted on studying for college entrance exams. I studied much more useful and fun subjects in London. The English language during the day and films almost every night at the Prince Charles Theatre, where art films were screened at discount prices. Beyond film, the Tate and the British Museum were my usual hangouts, and I also sought out almost every musical that played in London. I developed my deep appreciation for art, music, and theater while in London. While I received some financial support from my family, I mostly supported myself by working part-time. After I saved up enough money to travel, I put on my backpack and took off for a month-long grand tour of my own around Europe. My goal was clear. I intended to visit as many museums and galleries in Europe as possible. And I was absolutely determined to see the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. My first stop in Paris was the Musée d'Orsay. Please excuse my pronounce. The place was filled with artworks I had only seen previously in textbooks. While I spent hours in the museum, there is one memory that I particularly cherish to this day. When I first saw The Angelus by Jean-Francois Millet, the 19th century French painter, I stood there weeping like a child for a good half hour. This calm and peaceful scene of a pageant couple putting their rough hands together in prayer at the end of a hard day was heart-achingly beautiful. I could almost hear a distant church bell ringing from the sunset horizon of the autumn harvest field. This was the moment when all of my religious questions about God and God's existence, my disillusionment with the Protestant church and the people who I felt were falsely following Christ, melted away like snowflakes in a wildfire. I remember thinking that nothing would really matter if one could pray so purely and so innocently, like those peasants in the field. It was the moment of my reconciliation with God. By the time I left the museum, I had rediscovered my dream of becoming an artist that had been long forgotten. How wonderful would it be to be able to touch somebody's heart for a living, much as Millet's painting had touched mine. However, I didn't have the faintest idea how I would pursue this new yearning, this new sense of a personal calling. I went back to Korea that year and made another active decision to apply for an undergraduate exchange program at the University of Iowa. Fortunately, I was selected to participate in the program, and I started to take art courses during my time in Iowa City. I was admitted into the graduate program in design at the University of Iowa later. When I began my graduate study in design, I pursued all aspects of design, including computer graphics and three-dimensional design, which was similar to the Bauhaus approach. I learned skills and techniques to execute my ideas and concepts by experimenting with various materials and media. I experimented with various crafts, including digital media, metalsmithing, carpentry, letterpress, and developed a personal methodology of design by not limiting design to particular dimensions or media. Instead, I try to embrace traditional and new, Western and Eastern methods of art and design making while engaging with aspects of my native Korean aesthetics.
Hey, Suki.
Oh,
Suki, I think that it might be cycling through your slideshow a little bit faster than what you intended.
okay.
Just a note there, if you want to slow down and give people an opportunity to see the images a little bit better. It stopped on this video and cycled through this a couple of times,
Okay.
but I just wanted to because I know you're reading, I wanted to let you know that it was going a little bit quick.
Okay. Thank you, Kat. So during my graduate years, I took the philosophy of William Morris, the leader of the arts and crafts movement, to heart. Morris insisted that no work should be carried out in his workshop before he had personally mastered the appropriate techniques and materials, arguing that without dignified creative human occupation, people became disconnected from life. I involved myself in crafting as well as designing. So this, for my MA thesis project, I wanted to design fun, multimedia, multifunctional furniture that can be moved around and that gives the illusion of space. I wanted people to play with my furniture. So this is one of my MA thesis project pieces called "A Circle Can Be a Rectangle" table. So you already saw this, but bear with me. So this is the plan view of the furniture. And this is the one single table, and this is in circular form, and this is a rectangular form. And people say my table design has some similarity to the design of Eileen Gray. Gray was an early 20th century textile, furniture, and lamp designer, an architect who designed for multifunctionality and used manipulation of pivoting components in her furniture. In her case, this is her furniture. In her case, it was a drawer that pivots around in a cabinet. Mine are swing out tabletops. For this piece, I took a hint from a children's puzzle. An octagon is a combination of two perfect squares and four diamonds, like a puzzle. It can be arranged in many different ways, and it can be extended to different lengths to suit different purposes. While I was exploring different materials, methods, and media, I was also interested in what's happening in the world. I believe a designer has an important role in society, and designers should provide a visual voice for social concerns and be leading minds in society. As a person from a country where the people still have a collective memory of war horrors, I was particularly agitated by the Iran-Iraq warfare in the US was involved in at that time. I designed and launched an anti-war campaign series and shared it with my design community when we gathered together. Today, I would have been able to share via social media platforms, but back then I shared it with my community when we gathered together in person. So this is a digital poster that I designed in 1999 or before. Digital poster, anti-war poster. While I continue to explore design methodology and experiment with various crafts, the core of my design pivots around my admiration for nature and longing for my native Korean heritage. When I began to explore traditional Korean patterns, I learned that they are simplification of nature based upon totemic beliefs and deep respect for nature. The patterns are composed in harmony and unity, just as we long to coexist with nature. I want to express my admiration and appreciation for nature and trying to bring it into our ordinary lifestyle. As I continued to explore Korean traditional patterns, I was particularly intrigued by jogakbo, the Korean patchwork wrapping cloth. For its unconventional patterns, striking color schemes, and compositions, spontaneity of process, as well as its cultural contribution as an art form in society, and its spiritual background. Surviving jogakbo today mostly were created by anonymous women in the late 19th century Joseon dynasty. This unique form of art was part of the Korean needlecraft known as gyubang gonghae. One of the earliest patchwork wrapping cloth was made in the early Tang dynasty and found in a Buddhist cave temple in Dunhuang, a key trading post on the Silk Road. Its utilitarian purpose was the storage of sacred objects by Buddhist monks. However, it carried a more significant spiritual purpose. Primitive Buddhist monks made priests' robes, ritual textiles, banners, and wrapping cloth out of donated garments, which they cut into pieces and made into these things. This practice manifests the Buddhist philosophy of humility, frugality, and detachment being apart from worldly matters. It's my guess that the patchwork wrapping cloth spread throughout East Asian countries with the spread of Buddhism. The earliest jogakbo in Korea was found in Sunam Temple, used as a cover for the monk Uichan's priestly robe. These early jogakbos were made and used for Buddhist monks and Buddhist rituals. Later, they became popular amongst commoners, especially in the late Joseon dynasty. Crafting jogakbo had two utilitarian purposes for commoners. First, mothers taught their daughters how to sew using fabric left over from making the family's garments. Secondly, it was a way to make something useful out of scraps of fabric. In either cases, the making of jogakbo was driven by respect for precious materials and by a sense of frugality, which was considered one of a woman's virtues at that time. In fact, wrapping cloth were a versatile part of daily life in the Joseon dynasty and are still used in today's Korea. They're used to wrap gifts, store and carry things, and to cover food on the table. Jogakbo making had other secondary, yet not less important purposes. Women believed that making jogakbo would bring happiness and longevity to their family through the symbolism of patching many pieces together, and the act of making provided women a creative outlet in the restricted and Neo-Confucian society of the time, which restricted them to living in the confined women's court of their homes. I imagine that a maker of jogakbo no longer felt confined to her boudoir psychologically while creating jogakbo, even if she remained there physically. She was an artist in her studio, deeply immersed in the process of making art. She had full freedom of creativity while making jogakbo. Perhaps I related to these women so deeply because of my own experience of staying home with the baby when I no longer could spend days and nights in art studios whenever I wanted. This piece, it was a piece I made when I was pregnant with my first son, imagining his laughter. I hand-stitched over 300 silk fabric pieces, and it took me 3 months to complete. Artists' artistic growth, their changes in methodology and medium of expression evolves organically. Sometimes it occurs within, sometimes it happens due to outside circumstances, During my graduate school years, I was intrigued by nature and Korean traditional patterns. I tried to adopt patterns from nature, then apply those patterns to design utilitarian and decorative objects. I spent days and nights in a wood workshop, a metal workshop, a print shop, and a computer lab, as long as it took, as long as I could, to execute my design ideas and concepts. Later, my interest in nature and design extended to ecologically driven design in the aspects of both materials and methods. But my way of studio practice needed to change as I entered motherhood, having a small family to take care of. While searching for a new method, I discovered traditional needle crafts and natural dye methods, which worked with my new family situation, and I was granted a Sustainability, Energy, Environment Initiatives research grant from the University of Dayton. With the grant and my husband's help with the baby, I was able to take an intensive 12-week natural dye workshop with the Korean traditional master in the summer of 2008. I fell in love with the method and materials of natural dye and textiles. I learned and I explored various dye steps, methods, and colors, then adopted natural dye and textiles as my main method and material of design. I felt that in doing this, I embraced a deeper engagement with nature in my design beyond simply emulating patterns and textures. Natural dyes are safe for humans and environmentally friendly compared with synthetic dyes. In addition to being non-toxic, hues from natural dyes are deeper and richer, allowing subtle tonal range. And in my opinion, natural dye colors are more beautiful. This series of work was inspired by the patterns of jogakbo, the Korean traditional wrapping cloth, and colored using natural dye techniques. I reinterpreted the patterns and composition and adapted them into my own more modern designs using colors from natural dyes. And my designs have also been driven by nostalgia for my homeland's mountains, rivers, blossoms, and ocean waves. As I explore natural dyes, I was particularly attracted to natural indigo dye. Indigo is among the oldest dyes used by humans, and sources of natural indigo can be found in many parts of the world. It can yield a remarkable tonal range with excellent fastness. It can be stored after harvest and converted for use later. And this preservability made it an extremely valuable commodity. Every continent had its own species of indigo with its own means of preparation and storage. Indigo has long been thought to possess efficacious medicinal benefits such as antimicrobial activity, a sterilizing effect, an insect repellent effect, detoxifying action, deodorant action, relieving of febrile skin disease and itching, and UV protection. Thus, it was used for the ancient Egyptians' face paint, to dye Japanese samurai war armor, and for Scottish warriors' body paint. However, there is as yet no modern scientific evidence to support these medicinal benefits. In Europe, indigo was a rare and sacred commodity and was believed to have spiritual properties. For this reason, the deep blue color was associated with the humanity of Jesus Christ, and later the color blue became the visual symbol of Virgin Mary, who had given Christ his human nature. I'll start this first. My continued journey with nature and design has always been underlaid with a personal respect for the spiritual aspects of nature and Christian spirituality. Thus, for me, it was natural to begin to incorporate indigo dye and its spiritual properties into my art making. In addition, hand sewing to me is like continuing the rosary. It is a way of meditation, a means of clearing my mind of worldly thoughts. It sometimes takes months to complete a single piece. Nevertheless, I enjoy the process of making it as much as the final product, as I hope to be a better person as I complete piece after piece. Over the past several years, I have collaborated with my colleague, Darden Bradshaw, to create a series of liturgical banners for the Chapel of Immaculate Conception at the University of Dayton, sponsored by Campus Ministry. We have completed 4 sets of banners for Lenten, Advent, Marianist, and Ordinary Time. Through this collaborative work, we have tried to make connections between earthly materials, Christian spirituality, and the Marianist charism. The series of banners encompasses rich symbolism and metaphors as we make decisions on techniques, methods of construction, and materials. The Marianist banners are made of cotton fabric dyed with natural indigo dye using the shibori, Japanese resistant dye technique, and embellished with hand stitching to create mandala patterns. The deep blue color has a strong association with the Virgin Mary in Western classical Christian art. We chose cotton fabric for its simple and common, humble nature. We felt the Marianist charism of serving others aligns with the characteristics of cotton fabric. The mandala patterns on the surface of the banners celebrate Marianist acceptance of and inclusivity toward other faith traditions. Ordinary time banners are made out of raw silk with many different natural dyes to create various shades of the ordinary time liturgical color green. The banners composed of many shapes and shades of green sewn together represent people in various shape and colors coming together in ordinary time. Green is the most abundant color in nature, but ironically, green is the rarest dye color as it does not exist in nature. By this I mean that there's no colorant you can use to get green directly from a single dye stuff. In order to dye fabric green, you need to combine blue, or oftentimes indigo, and yellow dyes, which are abundant in nature. For this banner design, 7 different kinds of yellow dye stuff and indigo were used to create multiple shades of green. I enjoy working with raw silk because of the texture of its distinctive thread, the way it observes dye colorants, and its translucency. Raw silk has a coarse texture and is knobby, unlike typical smooth silk fabric. It is an undefinable thrill to see light showing through when the piece is hung against light. I like people to touch and feel the texture of my pieces, and thereby to experience the mood and the spiritual environment created by the work. So now I'd like to tell you about another facet of my engagement with nature and design in the world. In the works I described so far today, I have emulated nature and used nature in the form of natural materials and methods. But in my work, I have also tried to contribute more directly to society's valuing of nature by telling the story of the grassland ecosystem in the state of Ohio where I live.
Sustainability. It's the ability to act through your normal daily routines, whatever action you want to do, but do them in such a way that you do not destroy, you don't use up the world, you don't destroy things. So it enables you to continue to have quality environment, and at the same time to do actions to whatever you choose to do, whether it's working with people or whatever. So that this ability to keep the earth and where you live in quality, that's sustainability.
I undertook a documentary film project, Fire, Rain, Wind, Snow, and Fire, a story of the prairie, as part of a Hanley Sustainability Institute scholarship project. The film captures the sublime beauty of the prairie, a unique and historically significant grassland ecosystem in the state of Ohio. The documentary film takes place in two locations, Huffman Prairie and Brother Don Geiger's Prairie. Huffman Prairie is best known as the site of early flight experiments by the Wright brothers and remains a valuable preserve for native plant and animal communities. Brother Don Geiger, Society of Mary, was Professor Emeritus of Biology at the University of Dayton. He personally rescued a piece of land near I-675 where it was destined to become highway lawn and restored it to tall grassland, a native prairie, which is now called the Brother Don Geiger Prairie. The documentary attempts to engage viewers' consciousness of where we are, what we see, what we value, and what we preserve in the natural world. This work is a series of works titled The Gate of Heavenly Peace. The piece is inspired by the Emperor's Gate at the Forbidden City in Beijing, China. What intrigued me was the number symbolism in China that permeated people's ordinary lives. I tried to integrate Chinese number symbolism with that of Christianity. In China, the number 9 is sacred number reserved for the emperor's use. And the number 3 is a sacred number in Christianity that indicates Yahweh the Father, Christ the Son, and the Holy Spirit. The combination of 9 rows and 9 columns of 3-inch cubes metaphorically represents a gateway to heavenly peace for Christians and China and the world. My artistic research is expansive and complex in nature because we humans are complex beings. I am a person with multiple identities, Korean, American, woman, mother, scholar, designer, professor, and a person who has constantly been required to navigate, adapt to, and negotiate multicultural environments. As a result, it has become my nature to be curious, explorative, flexible, and experimental. The constant negotiation of identities that I experienced as a foreign-born adult living in the US, my appreciation of the natural world, and my yearning for deep spirituality are the weft and warp threads woven together in my research. Hence, my research agenda represents the ways in which I observe, explore, and express who I am in this world. And after seeing all my work, and some people ask me, so what kind of designer are you? Graphic designer? Furniture designer? Textile designer? I answer to them saying, I design things that bring beauty, joy, and meaning to our daily lives. Thank you for your time and attention to the story of my artistic journey. I hope it was worthy of your time this afternoon. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Suki. So folks, if you have questions, I would love for you to pop those into the chat. And I will start on my end. I'm curious, so you talked a little bit about how your practice changed with the start of your family, but I'm really curious, what does your practice look like today? Like, is there a what could we expect if we were in a day of the life of Suki as an artist? Like, what does it look like to go into the studio? When does that happen? Do you have any ritual around that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, my kitchen is my dye lab, natural dye lab. And my laundry room in the corner, I have a sewing machine and a shelf with all these materials and stuff. So my home is my studio. So whenever I have time, without leaving my family too far, I just, like boil my dye stuff and I dye my fabric and bring those in my laundry room and start, putting things together. So that's my studio life.
All right. So before we get too far, if you want to stop sharing, and then you and I can just chat about this, we do have a question from Saya, I think. And Saya would like to know, are there any materials you wish to experiment with in the future?
Well, right now I'm deeply involved, engaged with the natural fabric and natural dye. And I would like to continue work with indigo. Indigo is non-toxic, and there are so many medicinal benefits, but it really has awful smell. But I'm still working with it, experimenting with it, and I would like to do not so much of a material, but I would like to do more with space, like installation piece. Now my kids has grown up, and I have some freedom. And now I would like to play with the space and do some installation piece. Did I answer your question, Saya?
I'm going to go with, that's a great answer that opens up for more. We have a comment from a fellow artist who utilizes indigo quite a bit. Sandy Schellenberger notes that she thinks it's so beautiful and she especially loves the indigo. No surprise there. So let's see here. The Jokobo, I am sure I did not say that correctly. I apologize. Designs are compelling. Did they influence Mondrian, do you think? And because the design looks really familiar, that's a note from Deborah.
Yes, that was a very keen observation you had. But then these anonymous women lived before Mondrian, and there's no way that they saw Mondrian's painting when they were alive. But a lot of people make that observation, their composition, their color, disposition and all is very much similar to modern graphics and modern art painting.
Wonderful. Anya would like to know, what has been your most shocking moment of discovery as an artist?
I don't know. What type of shocking moment? I had many shocking moments in my life. I was hit by a car the other day and my bike was stolen. And those were shocking moments. But as an artist, I don't know what
Of discovery, like maybe an
discovery.
aha moment. So maybe not shocking, but like an aha moment as an artist.
See this indigo, I was drawn to this color and I just fell in love with the tonal range it gives. And I just love my fabric. Then later, when I discovered this has significant color symbolism with Christianity, the humanity of Jesus Christ. And then I saw all this Christian classical art, Jesus wearing red and blue garment, red representing the heavenly part of Jesus, and blue represents his human side of him. Then naturally, Virgin Mary, the symbolism is blue. And now you cannot miss it. Now you know it, you cannot miss it. Whenever you see Virgin Mary painting, they're all wearing blue garments. So that was my shocking, per se moment of discovery. So those colors and how those were used, and how much we have this ingrained in our culture.
That's great. I think a really great follow-up question from Chiquita. As an artist, do you ever encounter resistance to your treatment of spiritual themes and Christianity within your work? And if so, how do you respond?
I never encountered resistance to any of my practice and spirituality in my work. Can you think of any specific examples of those resistance might be?
No, I just think it was a general question.
Yeah, I'm asking Chiquita if you can specify a little more detailed resistance I might encounter, because so far I have not encountered any resistance to my my practice and treatment of spirituality in my work.
All right, well, we wait for that response. Xiao Li, I think I am dominantly English speaking, so apologize in advance for any mispronunciation. Where can people get your artwork?
I don't know. Library owns it. Well, Kathy Webb is here. Library purchased one, and our multi-ethnic group, ethnic office purchased one. And like after I have an exhibition, somebody approached me and say, "Can I purchase it?" Then I sold it. But other than that, I don't have a gallery representation, or I don't usually put price tag on my works. So, but I've done commissioned work. The the chapel banners, those were commissioned work sponsored by the campus ministry. So in a way,
what I'm hearing you say is that folks that have interest in your work are welcome to reach out to you to talk about the opportunity of purchasing work. So you have a website, which is?
It's Kwon.studio. That's it. Kwon.
We'll make sure we link to it when we have this up on YouTube. So no worries there. We have another question. Anya is curious, how much do you plan before a piece and how much of your process is spontaneous?
Actually, that's almost, always artists have been asked, how much control an accident, that balance between, how much planning, controlling, or how much accident that you allow. So it's same on my writing or, my art making. I have this time to percolate ideas. I call it sizzling on my back burner. So I think about it for a long time. I have this morning ritual to go to the pool and swimming for 30 minutes. And that's my time of meditation. And I just think about it and think and let it percolate, let it sizzle. Then when I'm ready, it's almost instant that I make it. Once I have that idea, making part doesn't take so long. And I try to balance that control and chance, control and accident while I'm making.
I really appreciate that you brought up the fact that you kind of hold space for thought about your work within that swimming routine. I think that that's often an element that folks don't think about is having that space for deep thought, uninterrupted thought about your work. And I love that you talk about that as meditation time, because when I look at your work, I see meditation in your work, like the intense hand skills and repetition that's necessary to complete a piece. For me personally, imagining myself making work like that, there's quite a bit of meditation in that handwork. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Well, as I mentioned in my talk, hand sewing to me is prayer, and hand sewing to me is meditation. And I haven't encountered, that yet, but some people, if they have some, objection to my work, what are you? Are you Buddhist or Christian? Because I'm talking about mandala, mandala pattern in my work, and the humility of monk, and the origin of Jogakbo. That'll be another topic of discussion, but I greatly value the time of meditation and the time alone with your God, the spiritual being. So did I answer your question, or am I just going around?
No, I think it works. I think it works. And I think that also kind of answers the question. Chiquita followed up with the
Yes.
comment, in our culture today, there's often an attitude of avoidance of religious topics. And she just wondered if you had encountered that.
Yes. So I just saw that. That's I try to imply some answers to that question. So the society goes toward atheist culture. I totally understand, the religious groups have done so many things unspeakable in the past. But that moment that I shared with you, see, when I was sharing that moment with you all, I felt like I was naked in front of all. See, that's the intimate moment for me. And that moment was the turning point for me to become an artist. And that moment, as I said, with reconciliation with God, to me, all those questions of, is God existing? Is it real? Is, all that. And then, what church is doing, and people, forcefully following Jesus Christ wrong. I mean, in my opinion. So all those questions and, disillusionment. But that moment, I sort of found my own answer. So if you can pray purely and innocently to whatever deity that you believe in, that wouldn't be matter to me, or matter, period, full stop.
Great.
But that's my answer. So I don't want to impose that to anybody, of course.
Thank you. Deborah has a question for you. Do you have a favorite medium, silk, paper, film, and much more? Do you find yourself drawn again and again to one over the other?
Well, film is one medium that I'm going back. But then film takes a lot of money. Making that 30-minute, it's not even full feature film that I made. It's 30-minute documentary film that required a lot of money, staff, and it's a huge project that you want to undertake. I would like to make another documentary film, my own way of telling a story of Dunbar, Paul Laurence Dunbar. And I think he was a great person, an artist and human, and who went through his own turmoil, time. And I would like to capture human Dunbar. And I would like to make a documentary of him. Then, grant proposal involves and, fundraising involves. So I haven't undertaken that project yet, but that's one project that I would like to undertake in the future. So film and textile, and soon I would like to experiment with space. So installation piece, a larger installation piece. So those are what I'm thinking and planning.
Wonderful. So as a closing question, I'm curious, what has it meant to be a part of this exhibition, the Nexus of Art and Health here at the OAC Rife for you?
Could you repeat that question again?
What has being part of one of the exhibiting artists within the exhibition, the Nexus of Art and Health, what has that experience been like for you? What does it mean to you as an artist?
Well, again, thanks to Sienna, who organized and curated the exhibition. And I was just surprised to scope of arts that she had put together. And, health can be interpreted and viewed and looked at so many different ways, in so many different forms, and so many different medium. I was just amazed, and I was simply awed at seeing other artists' work at the gallery, and I was honored to be part of that.
Wonderful. And so I think that that's a really great stopping point for us. Thank you again, Suki, for your great artist talk. And thank you all for joining us for this talk by Suki Kwon as part of our programming for the Nexus of Art and Health exhibition. I'd like to give a special thank you to the curator, Sienna Brown, of course, the participating artists, as well as the Ohio Arts Council's board, the Ohio legislature, and the governor who support the OAC, this great space, and of course, Ohio artists. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you.